A large misconception is probably that all of these crimes are committed by large-scale actors or extremely sophisticated actors. In reality, it's a whole group of different types of people, ranging in different ages, backgrounds, and locations around the world. Some of the, I would say, least sophisticated actors that I have seen have taught me some very fascinating insights. Maybe even a big threat actor just didn't think about abusing or misusing this thing in that way, but some kid had an idea. Everybody has a different lens in which they look at these threats through, taking all of those, coalescing them together to build an understanding of what it is that we're seeing. I think it serves us well when we have a diverse background.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of Beyond the Alert. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Blake Butler, Senior Manager and Head of Financial Crime Threat Intelligence at PayPal. Blake, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Ian.
All right, we have a lot to cover. I'm going to dive right in. So you've spent years tracking down some of the most sophisticated financial crimes on the planet, but what is the biggest misconception people have about what these crimes actually are?
Well, I think a large misconception is probably that all of these crimes are committed by large scale actors or extremely sophisticated actors. And I think that there's actually a wide spectrum of a lot of different types of threat actors that targets various platforms. And those can be individuals that are in their teen years to, nation state actors who are in their later years in life. So I think a big misconception is that a lot of the threats that exist out there are just from these super sophisticated financially motivated cyber actors, and in reality, it's a whole group of different types of people, ranging in different ages, backgrounds, and locations around the world.
So does that mindset have an impact on how companies secure themselves?
I think it definitely does. I think, a lot of the strategies that we use to mitigate or protect the platform is pretty standard across the spectrum. But I think it's important to keep in mind a lot of the different emerging tools and techniques and methods that criminals leverage can come from just people interacting with the platform and understanding the processes that exist and maybe some of the process vulnerabilities or challenges that the platform might have. And so I think instead of thinking about targeting 0 days for mitigation, or I think we absolutely need to patch the platform and we need to make sure that we're mitigating any sort of vulnerabilities that exist. But I think also in many cases, we just need to think about the way in which the products are offered to customers and how those products and the information that we're exposing could be abused in some way. So I think it absolutely does impact the way in which we sort of secure the platform and the way in which we think about the products that we build.
Interesting. So when you're hunting a financially motivated threat actor, what single piece of intelligence tells you that this is a serious group versus a small-time criminal, or is that not even a thing based on what you just shared?
Sure, I think the sophistication of a threat actor really comes down to a number of components. Some of those include how quickly they move, how quickly they are able to gain access to an account or monetize an account. It comes down to their trade craft, what sort of infrastructure are they using? And as far as cash out is concerned, is this a strategy or method that we've seen that's rather popular? Or is it sort of niche and new and maybe something that we haven't observed before? So when I am looking at a threat actor and I'm watching them operate on the platform, it really comes down to some of those key components: how swiftly they're moving, the methods and techniques that they're using, if we've seen them before or not, and then if they're able to get away, sort of in a sense, where they accidentally don't leak some selector that might allow us to identify who they are, where they're located, different things like this. So there's absolutely features exhibited from criminal activity that gives us an idea of if they're sophisticated, if they're working alone, if they're working with others, different details like this.
Okay. And then how has the sophistication of phishing and social engineering evolved in the last 3 years?
Well, I think it's constantly evolving, and in the last 3 years, I would say a lot of platforms have implemented controls to mitigate phishing and mitigate social engineering to the best of their ability. I think fraudsters again are finding methods and techniques to abuse the products and abuse the platforms themselves. Instead of sending phishing emails from maybe a Gmail address, they're registering websites associated with maybe government entities or maybe with universities. They're figuring out other ways in which to overcome spam controls at various mail providers. And I think even abusing the products that different organizations have. If I have the ability to send an invoice to somebody, if I have the ability to request money from somebody, fraudsters are able to sort of leverage these and abuse these sort of rails and products and experiences, and might be able to send those to their targeted victim set. So I think as we implement security controls, just like anything, fraudsters, criminal actors end up enhancing their sort of tradecraft, and so they always find the gaps within our security controls that we've got. And I think over the past number of years, we've seen them sort of up their game in finding the choke points that make it difficult from a mitigation perspective, ways to amplify maybe a single message instead of making the platform send thousands of messages itself. There's a lot of different strategies and tricks that criminals can leverage to sort of scale their abuse. And so I think that this is something we've seen increase over the past number of years.
So, walk us through what happens in the first 48 hours after you detect a major credential harvesting operation targeting payment platforms.
So when we talk about credential harvesting, there's a number of different things that come to my mind. That could be harvesting credentials from malware data sets. That could be harvesting credentials from combo lists or exposures or data dumps and data breaches that are out there. As far as these sort of observations that our organization would see in a cred stuffing attack, there's a lot of different controls that we have that automatically mitigate a lot of this sort of abusive traffic. We have, pattern anomaly detection. We have rate limiting controls. We have a lot of different things like this. But any of the traffic that might end up bleeding through, this is where we go through the process of identifying sort of what accounts were potentially accessed and what sort of experience that user encountered. Did they attempt to navigate to certain pages and pull certain data out of those consumer accounts? What was the user or the threat actor doing once inside of the account? So I think we look at a lot of the behavioral and statistical and do statistical analysis over those accounts. We look at what sort of the motive is based off of the pages that they navigated to. If I gain access to an account, do I immediately go to the multi-factor authentication enrollment page? Then this is probably indicative of them attempting to maintain access to the account. Do they go to the page that has all the financial instruments listed? They could be doing something else there. And so really understanding sort of what the MO is, what the strategy is very important. And then obviously resecuring those consumer accounts. In many cases, depending on the strategy that's used, we force enroll a lot of those populations into multi-factor authentication for enhanced security controls if they weren't already. And we also send out alerts letting our users know that their account may have been accessed, and to resecure their account and to give them best recommendations of not reusing the same password across multiple platforms, encouraging them to enroll in multi-factor authentication if they haven't across the other platforms that they might be on, and anything else that might help them enhance their security posture. Because as we all know, maybe PayPal itself isn't the primary issue here. Maybe it's they reuse their password or they reuse something else, a security question on a different platform that ended up getting compromised. And then that data is simply attempted to be reused against our platform.
Okay. So then, how do you balance moving fast to stop active fraud versus gathering enough intelligence for attribution and potential prosecution?
I think that is probably one of the most challenging things, is to balance the mitigation and containment with intelligence collection. And I think that these are actually sort of two different work streams. I think a security operations center, their main function is to actually mitigate the threat that's happening, mitigate the incoming pressure, mitigate the abuse, work with the appropriate teams to have remediation overall. And I think an organization that focuses on, or a team that focuses on threat intelligence, will be working alongside the security operations center, but will be gathering those breadcrumbs that might be used or could be used to understand or uncover more subtleties or more details about that threat that's hitting the platform. So I think it's the same thing when we identify infrastructure. In many cases, we want to take down the infrastructure. In many cases, we want to cause some sort of disruption to that infrastructure. But I think it comes down to risk appetite. It's no different from any business. We have to balance the risk of disruption with the intelligence collection that we're getting versus the threat that that thing is posing to the organization. And so, I can't say that I have a clear answer for you. I think every organization has to come up with their own strategy and their own risk appetite, but it is this balance of mitigation, containment, remediation, while also maintaining visibility and hopefully not pushing them somewhere where you lose that visibility. So it's a very interesting dance that we have to figure out. So hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. I think going back to the very beginning where we said you emphasized it doesn't always have to be a major threat actor. It could also be someone small, right? I think the for people who aren't in your space, they're so used to the over the top TV shows and cybersecurity, and the episodes of everything blowing up and happening at once that it's really hard unless you're lucky like me to speak with people like yourself to understand how does it really look on the ground and that there are different like with anything, right? Different experts for each component of an incident, the follow up and then prevention as well.
Absolutely. And I have to be honest, some of the, I would say, least sophisticated actors that I have seen have taught me some very fascinating insights. And it's about this divergent thinking, it's about this lateral thinking where maybe even a big threat actor just didn't think about abusing or misusing this thing in that way. But some kid had an idea or some individual had an idea and was like, hey, I could probably abuse this in that way. And so there are things that I have learned from, individuals in their teens that I was like, "Wow, that's really clever, very well done." And then there are things that I've learned from seasoned threat actors who have been doing this for a long time and might be exposing some tradecraft. So there's always something new to learn each and every day, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm still, with PayPal today.
For sure. And I suppose it's the same way when you hire for your team, right? The more diverse of a background your team has, the more they have the different insights and viewpoints and creativity to say, wait a minute, let me look at it this way when everyone else is looking at it the opposite way, right?
Absolutely. I think the lens that we look at threats through is always different, and I think that that's why it's so great to have data scientists, to have people who are in threat intelligence, to have people who have information security backgrounds, maybe machine learning backgrounds, or someone who comes from customer service and has been in the fraud space. Yeah, everybody has a different lens in which they look at these threats through and has different experience of what they've observed. And I think taking all of those, coalescing them together to build an understanding of what it is that we're seeing, I think serves us well when we have a diverse background.
Absolutely. So, talk about a complex investigation, if you can, where traditional security tools completely missed the threat, and what did human intelligence catch that automation could not?
I think for anyone that's in this space, when we are conducting an investigation, there's probably 10 different tools that we use, and not one tool gives us the sort of full picture. In many cases, for active threats to the platform, we can leverage a lot of these different tools to give us insights, different perspective, different views, a different piece of the puzzle. But a lot of the times, it's not enough. A lot of the times, we require maybe some sort of human intelligence or human engagement with a threat actor or engagement with infrastructure to understand really what's taking place. And so I would say that there are threat actors that target the platform from, I would say, an arm's length, where they might be selling data to other fraud actors who can commit abuse against the platform. And then there's other ones who have direct interaction with the platform. Maybe they're running a particular service that requires them to have some sort of direct interaction. And so in those situations, especially for threats that are emerging or that appear to be significant, then we absolutely leverage human intelligence analysts that go out there and conduct human engagement with these actors to understand the infrastructure that's being used, to understand the ways in which they might be abusing or leveraging something against the platform itself. And so I'm not going to give any specific investigative examples, but I will say human intelligence is absolutely a component. We leverage different organizations to assist us with this. And in many cases, you might be surprised, a lot of security researchers actually reach out to us. PayPal runs a very robust bug bounty program. And within the bug bounty program, we get visibility into a lot of different vulnerabilities that may exist, but also people supply through that pipeline visibility into different groups, into different methods or techniques that they're hearing about from the different places that they hang out. And so there's actually a great sort of feed of data coming in from human to analysts or humans, investigators, or researchers that might be out there just poking around in certain places where individuals are talking about abusing the platform.
Interesting. I'm familiar with the bug bounty programs, but I never thought of that angle. That's really cool. So, what's one offensive technique that every SOC analyst should understand, but most do not?
I think disinformation and counterintelligence is becoming a bigger thing for threat actors. From an investigative perspective, in many cases, we will leverage the tools that exist to pull data on, let's say, infrastructure. And pulling that data might be passive. It's data that's already been collected historically. And so we can go pull the information and we can look at it and review what it looks like, without actually engaging with that infrastructure. I think in other cases, you have SOC analysts or maybe investigators who are a little bit, I wouldn't say aggressive, but a little bit more touch and go, where they might be actually directly interacting with that infrastructure. And I think it's really important to realize that our adversaries are constantly watching us as well. And what I mean by that is when we are investigating them through active means, they are looking at their Apache logs. They're looking at their web logs. They're looking at their servers and all the logs that are associated. And so I think it's very important to the best of our ability use tools that create abstraction between our organizations or even who we are or where we're located with the infrastructure that we're interacting with, because there have been cases and incidents where we might be investigating something, and lo and behold, a threat actor might post that, "Hey, look at what just touched my platform," or, "Hey, look at this request to this particular endpoint that I've never shared, or it's not public, or it's whatever else." The only way in which someone would know about that is because I seeded it, right? The threat actor seeding this as a canary to see who might be looking. And so I would say we need to be more aware of the counterintelligence components and thinking about what it is that we're interacting with and how we're touching threat infrastructure from an operational security perspective. I think not a lot of people think about this, and it's absolutely something that threat actors are leveraging to their advantage.
Fascinating. So, you created intelligence capture the flag at DEFCON. Why does teaching it for serial attribution through gamification matter for the next generation of threat intel analysts?
So I attended DEF CON and Black Hat for over a decade, and I loved playing capture the flag challenges. It's actually one of the things that I just loved more than anything else in my early years of cybersecurity and understanding and wanting to build my knowledge base. One of the challenging things that I always found with capture the flag challenges, though, is that there was sort of a end to your ability to continue in the CTF challenge. What I mean by that is, in many cases, the challenges might be very esoteric, or they might require you to have some sort of pedantic knowledge of a method, technique, whatever it is. And those CTF challenges did not teach people necessarily it did not educate them on how to overcome the challenge. CTF challenges are by definition competitive in nature. And so it's like who knows the most, who can figure out the most, who can, apply their knowledge, their skills, their experience to capture those flags faster than everybody else. I created iCTF originally to teach people and put them into the experience of doing a capture the flag. But also, when you were stuck on a flag for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, then the platform that we built would actually educate you. And it would seamlessly say, "Oh, hey, did you consider looking at this?" Or, "Hey, did you know that there's a news article about this method? You should take a look at that." And so it was a way in which to not just put people into the CTF arena to be challenged by others and to compete with others, but it also was an educational component because I don't want to just challenge people. I also want to educate and teach them so that they can learn the methods, the techniques, the strategies to overcome the challenge that they are presented with. Now, of course, when you go and are participating in one of my CTF challenges, if it takes you 45 minutes per challenge, then obviously you're not going to get first place. So it still allows those who know the data and know the methods and techniques to be competitive to make the first place, spot. But it also focuses on teaching those who are at the lower end of the spectrum to educate them, to encourage them, to teach them the strategies, the methods, the techniques that can be leveraged.
It's really interesting. Did you have anyone come back a few years later saying, "Hey, all those tips and tricks you taught me the first few times when I didn't win helped me win"?
So not that specifically, but I absolutely had individuals at the end of the CTF challenges come up to me and be like, "I didn't even know that you could do that with that bit of information," or "I didn't even know that by taking that and then pivoting, you could find all this other stuff. Like, that was such a cool technique. Never knew about it. Totally gonna leverage that in my tradecraft, moving forward." And so we had a lot of really great feedback over the years. I don't run iCTF at DEFCON anymore. We did that for a number of years, but in the time that we did run it, I was asked to come to various other conferences to run my challenge, and we had a lot of fun doing that and meeting a lot of people who are interested in the same sort of investigative open source intelligence attribution spaces as I am.
Must have been really rewarding to have people come up and say, "Hey, that was so cool. I had no idea. Now I can use that," right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about teaching other people. It's about learning, and then someone who's like, I there was one challenge in my last CTF of ICTF event that I did where someone was able to leak the email address tied to the thing that we set up, but they used a technique that I had never known about. And they captured the flag, but I had stuff monitoring the thing that they should have been hitting to get that data to be able to capture the flag. So I went up to them after the event and I was like, "Hey, how did you overcome this one challenge? Because I never saw you do the thing that I know you sort of need to do to get the flag." And they're like, "Oh no, I used this other technique." And I was like, "Holy cow, I never even know that you could do that." So it was equally educational for me because I got to learn different strategies from other people. And so it was a really cool experience.
That's awesome because the people who sign up for those challenges are passionate anyway. So you get the right group of people to have that kind of awesome back and forth. And it's so much more fun when people are passionate as well.
Absolutely.
All right. So, what is your take on AI and fraud detection? Are we automating away the investigative thinking that catches the sophisticated criminals? And these are totally not fair because I'm pitting you against humans versus AI and not the combination. So, does it help or does it steer you away from the investigative thinking from the human component, right? That would catch the criminal.
I think there's absolutely a use for AI within the security operations center space, within the anti-fraud space, within the risk space, identity, whatever vertical it is. I think a lot of the use of AI right now can help with triage, with tagging, with quick assessment of incoming data. So I think a lot of what the initial sort of tier 1 analysts would generally focus on, I think that AI can help automate and excel the ability to tag information and sort of surface it, the higher threat alerts to the team much quicker. I don't think that AI will necessarily entirely replace the tier 1 analyst. I think that that tier 1 analyst, you're still going to need to vet and validate and review the data that is coming through. It just like anything, whether it's a large language model or it's, the concept of AI now, I think there's still things that happen with hallucinations. There's still inaccuracies that surface. And so I still believe that we're still gonna need tier 1, tier 2 analysts to help with that stuff. But I think AI is absolutely rapidly moving us to a place where we can get to the data faster and it can help us uncover the threats that are more meaningful or have higher impact than having someone, going through a ticketing system and taking some time. So I think shortening the time to alert will and the time to tagging will produce a faster turnaround time in mitigation, but I don't think it's a silver bullet right now. I think we have quite some time, a little ways to go. And I think with some of the new models that are coming out that are specific for fraud detection or that are specific to information security, it's going to be interesting to see how these perform within large organizations moving forward.
For sure. So, as digital payments replace cash globally, what emerging threats keep you up at night that most people are not talking about yet?
I think we always are concerned about account security in general and the security of identity information and biometrics. And I think changing people's passwords out, changing their devices out, that stuff is very easy. I think as we move into this more biometric world and actors gain access to biometric related data, I think it's there's this universe that exists where account security and security of your financial assets, it's the ultimate thing. If I can get access to your biometric data, if I can get access to some of these other details related to you as an individual, then it can make it very challenging to operate in a cashless world. It can make it very difficult to operate in a solely digital world. And I think with the issues with identity theft, just in general, I think with the phishing that we're seeing, I think with the malware infections that we're seeing, the more and more data that is compromised from users, it's just going to have a bigger impact on their ability to operate in a full digital world. And that might be getting a credit line. That could be getting a loan for a car. That could be, enrolling in some sort of program that provides you the financial stability that you need. And so I think as fraudsters monetize that data, not just on PayPal, but just in general, I think it can make it much more difficult for those people to operate in a completely digital world. And I think the desire for individuals to opt out of just being in the digital world and, hey, I'm just going to do everything cash and I'm going to, live off grid or whatever. I think it makes it much more challenging for those individuals. And so that's something I think that doesn't necessarily keep me up at night, but definitely something that I'm generally concerned about. And I think I'm concerned about that for sort of the rest of humanity as fraud and abuse scale into the future.
For sure. And it's almost requiring extra resources that the average person may not have to be able to go off grid or focus more on cash only, right? So it becomes unfortunately a matter of the haves and have nots as well, because it's not easy anymore to try to avoid everything digital.
Yeah, I know. I mean, anywhere you go, you hand them cash and they look at you like you've got two heads. Everybody's expected to use a credit card or some sort of tap to pay, which I think is great, which I think is awesome. And I like that, but I do think that the more in which identity data is stolen, biometric data is stolen, at some point maybe your data is all out there, and now your credit score goes below a reasonable amount, and operating in this digital world, can be very challenging.
For sure. And it'll take organizations quite a bit of time to sort out how to approach that when that happens, because they'll be unprepared in the meantime. The people will be sitting there, right?
Exactly. Yep, absolutely.
10 years from now, what will the best financial crime investigators be spending their time doing that they're not doing today?
I'm not even sure in 5 years, what it's gonna look like.
You should say probably 2 years, 5 years.
I think that a lot more of time and effort will go into tactical tracking of the threats to the platform. I think the reason for that is the agility of threat actors is incredible. They can move very fast. They can stand up new infrastructure. They can get new identity documents. They can leverage whatever sort of stolen material that they have. And it just takes a little bit of a switch in a script or a tradecraft or a method to overcome a security control that maybe an organization has built. And so I think in the near future that organizations to be successful will need to increase their agility to handle threats. And the way to increase agility is going to be by having closer connections with various parts of your organization so that they can receive the data, take action, and do something right now with it instead of putting some sort of detection into alert mode for 2 months to see, how it performs to then promote it into a block or whatever. By the time you put that block in and it's taken 3 months, the threat actor has already adapted, changed, and moved on. And so I think in the future, individuals will need to spend more time writing detections that are agile and building relationships with the other teams within their organization to consume that data at the same rate in which threat actors are able to make adjustments. So that's what I think. I think this increase in agility is really necessary to be able to keep up.
Which in my mind is a good progression because this way cybersecurity isn't stuck to the small team and lack of budgets and becomes more of a cross functional requirement so that the other departments also hopefully will understand more about the importance and the need to invest in that department, right?
Yeah, I think that, and we've just got to break down silos. There are entire organizations where, or entire businesses where their organizations are so siloed, right? We have our SOC team, we have our threat intel team, we have our risk and our identity, and all these different organizations, and they rarely chat with each other. Some do, but there's not like formalized, handoffs in all cases. And so I think we need to figure out how to build that connective tissue between these teams and this life cycle of, hey, like I found this thing, you need to consume it, you need to block it, you need to do this thing. And also, what is the results? Like, what did we see after that thing was blocked? What are the other features that needs to feed back into the threat intel function, that needs to feed back into the SOC? And so figuring out the life cycle of how that all works together in a more streamlined manner, I think is really important.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. All right. This brings us to the last guest question from Alex Bovicelli, who is the Senior Director of Threat Intel at Tokyo Marine HCC. He asked, and he said, he apologizes in advance. Do you truly think you're confident that you understand your environment?
That is a loaded question for sure. And I think that whether it's our environment or our products or our processes or our flows, I think there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. We audit these systems continuously. We audit the corporate infrastructure. We audit our products. We audit the experiences, and we attempt to the best of our ability to identify any gaps that may exist. I think anybody that says that they 100% know or understand their infrastructure is probably lying to you. And I think that that comes with the increasing complexity. I think that comes with the increasing complexity of our products, our environments, and the different things that we've got going on. I think it also comes down to institutional knowledge that leaves when certain people leave. And they might have documented something, but at the end of the day, a lot of that nuanced insight cannot be conveyed to the people that come next. And so I think that's why due diligence is really important. I think continuous audits, continuous discoveries, continuous purple team and red teaming exercises. I think all of this allows us the opportunity to maybe sort of rediscover things that maybe we didn't know about or capabilities that might have gotten left in from a push that a developer did that they forgot that they left that specific endpoint in there or they forgot to check that one value or whatever it might be. So I would say that no one probably knows their environment 100%. I'm sure that there's always something going on there, but just like anything, layers of security is important. Security in depth mindset is important, And we have every aspect sort of in line to ensure that as we capture threats at the edge and it trickles down, our hope is that we capture everything. But to be perfectly honest, it's just the nature of the business. Things squeeze through, and that's why we have different lines of defense to increase the sort of coverage that we have. So that's the best way in which I can answer that.
I think you handled that one swimmingly. All right, Blake, it is your turn. What would you like to do to the next guest with your question?
My question would probably be, do you feel like the tools that your organization provides you is sufficient for you to get the job done, to meet the expectations? And the reason why I asked that question is that nobody has an unlimited budget for the tools, the software, the technology that they need. But I have found that in many cases, there's always a couple more that could provide another part of the puzzle that is really important. So whether it's a SOC analyst, whether it's somebody within the threat intel function, whether it's somebody within the pen testing realm, do you have the tools that you need to achieve the objective of your charter? And so that would probably be my question. Maybe a softball question, but I'm really interested to hear what the next person has to say about that.
That's a good one. I'm looking forward to it. Blake, where can people find you if they'd like to connect with you?
I'm primarily on LinkedIn. That's sort of where I hang out. I don't really have any other social media, so if anybody wants to reach out, the best place would be LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Blake. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Ann. Appreciate you.
Thanks to all our guests.